Come closer, not to the edge, but to the center, not to the fringe, but to the throne room of the tradition itself. This is not an attack from outside. This is an autopsy from within. This is exposing religious lies at the heart of Christendom, where the message fractured, where power replaced clarity, where fear outlived truth. The first lie, Christendom is built on pride. Christendom claims Christ. Christendom claims Christ, but it does not follow him. Christendom claims Christ. Christendom claims Christ, but it does not follow him. It follows councils, it follows empires, it follows creeds written under political pressure. It follows institutions that survive by compromise, violence and control. The name Christ became branding, the message became negotiable. Exposing religious lies begins here. A system that kills, conquers, enslaves, colonizes, and divides. In the name of a teacher who preached compassion, has already confessed betrayal. The second lie, unity under one God. Christendom preaches unity. It practices fragmentation. Christendom preaches unity. Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, Evangelical, Pentecostal, Charismatic, Reform, Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, Anglican, thousands of offshoots, thousands of sermons, thousands of incompatible truths. Same Christ, different salvation formulas, different heavens, different hells, different formal rules. Exposing religious lies, ask the question Christendom avoids. How does one truth multiply into contradiction unless truth is no longer the point? The third lie, divine authority behind doctrines and none lays God. Speaks through scripture, yet scripture require interpretation, and interpretation changes by denomination, culture, century, and power structure. So who speaks for God? The church that burned the heretics, the church that sold indulgences, the church that blessed slavery, the church that sanctified colonialism, the church that silenced women, the church that protected abusers. They all claim scripture, they all claim Christ, they all contradicted each other. Exposing religious lies reveals this. Scripture became a weapon because it was ambiguous enough to be bent. Authority to thy because God could not be cross-examined. The fourth lie, salvation truly clear, seminaries would not exist to argue it endlessly. Exposing religious lies states the obvious. Salvation confusion is not a mistake. It is leverage. Uncertainty keeps people dependent. Fear keeps them compliant. The fifth lie: Christendom opposes violence. Forwarding Christendom claims peace. Its history records blood. Crusades blessed by priests, wars sanctified by sermons, empires justified by scripture, nations conquered with crosses raised high. When Christendom needed power, love your enemy was postponed. Turn the other cheek or spiritualize the way. Exposing religious lies exposes this betrayal. Violence was not a failure of Christendom. It was one of its tools. The sixth lie: moral authority. Christendom claims moral leadership, yet it outsourced morality to obedience. Believe correct, even if you harm, submit correctly, even if you silence conscience. Follow doctrine, even when empathy protests. Genocide justified, slavery rationalized, patriarchy sanctified.
Exposing religious lies did not come empty-handed. It came carrying truth, and truth does not negotiate with fear. If fear is required, truth is already absent. We did not come to comfort the cage, we came to win over captured minds, to reclaim territory taken quietly, to dismantle every mechanism that kept obedience alive. Anything that fears examination survives only by force. This is not rebellion. This is recovery. Reclaiming your mind is not resistance. It is repair. Religion did not rule by accident, it ruled through tools, carefully designed, tested across generations, refined until resistance felt sinful. Systems that endure this long are engineered, not divine. We name them now, because what can be named can no longer hide. Fear of hell, the oldest weapon. Threats are the language of weak authority. Why must truth threaten to survive? Why must morality be enforced with torture? Why must goodness be terrified into existence? Virtue that requires fear is not virtue. Fear of hell was not justice. It was psychological blackmail. Obedience extracted under threat, not chosen through understanding. Consent given under terror is not consent. A truth that needs eternal fire has already confessed its weakness. Truth were surveillance tools installed to keep the mind restless, to prevent inner peace, to stop self-trust from forming. Inner silence is dangerous, only to control systems. A belief system that fears imagination, fears freedom. Imagination is the birthplace of autonomy. Sin, the internal leash. Control works best when the prisoner holds the chain. Why unnatural impulses labeled criminal? Why is curiosity framed as rebellion? Why is self-interest painted as corruption? When nature is criminalized, obedience becomes survival. Sin was not moral clarity, it was behavioral control, a way to keep guilt permanently available, ready to be activated on demand. Permanently guarantees permanent authority. A system that defines you as broken never has to prove its authority. Weakness is manufactured to justify rule. Guilt, the silent enforcer. The quietest chains are the strongest. Why must you apologize for thinking? Why must doubt feel dirty? Why must questioning feel like betrayal? Truth, what comes scrutiny, lies resented. Guilt was not conscience, it was conditioning. Installed to punish the mind without witnesses. Self-punishment is outsourced control. When guilt replaces reason, obedience becomes automatic. Automation is the goal of indoctrination. Shame, the identity reason. Shame does not correct behavior, it deletes selfhood. Why must your nature be hidden? Why must your body feel wrong? Why must actions be performed without explanation? Why must compliance be rehearsed weekly? Habits can replace thought if repeated long enough. Ritual was not spirituality, it was muscle memory. Training obedience into the body until the mind no longer needed persuasion. When the body obeys, the mind is bypassed. Habit replaced choice. Choice disappears quietly, not violently. Authority, the untouchable voice. Untouchable power fears accountability. Why must truth come from a title? Why must actions stop a title? Why must judgment stop a truth?
Gospel of freedom from religion's control. Freedom from the tools used by all religions. Come and listen, not as a convert, but as a human being reclaiming breath. This is not a gospel against meaning. This is a gospel against machinery, not against spirituality. but against systems that learn how to dominate the mind and call it God. This is the gospel of freedom from religious tools of control, tools perfected across cultures, scriptures, denominations, and centuries, changing names, changing symbols, but keeping the same function. Freedom from fear. We proclaim freedom from fear. Fear of hell. Fear of punishment. Fear of invisible enemies. Fear of eternal surveillance. Fear was never revelation. Fear was governance. Hell was not justice, it was leverage. Demons were not truth, they were anxiety managers. Apocalypse was relentlessly, it was behavioral control. This gospel leads you out of fear and into steadiness. Where your nervous system calms, your thinking returns, and morality no longer needs terror to function. Freedom from indoctrination. We proclaim freedom from indoctrination. Beliefs installed before consent, truths inherited before comparison, answers memorized before questions were allowed. Repetition replaced reasoning. Tradition replaced evidence. Familiarity replaced truth. This gospel brings you back to choice. Where belief slows down. Where every idea must earn its place. Where nothing enters the mind without permission. Freedom from manipulation. We proclaim freedom from manipulation. From emotion engineered as revelation. From music used to dissolve resistance. From atmosphere designed to bypass thought. Feelings were staged, tears were harvested, surrender was induced. This gospel restores separation between emotion and obedience. Where you can feel deeply without being owned, where awe no longer replaces understanding. Freedom from guilt and shame. We proclaim freedom from guilt manipulation. From inherited sin. From moral debt you never agreed to. From shame implanted to ensure dependence. Guilt was not morality, it was a leash. Shame was not humility, it was self-hating. This gospel restores dignity. Where responsibility exists without self-hatred, where worth is intrinsic, where forgiveness is no longer a transaction. Freedom from authority worship. We answers for we. This gospel restores scale, where authority becomes human again, where claims must stand on evidence, where respect is earned, not demanded. Freedom from narrative control. We proclaim freedom from narrative captivity, from being defined as the problem, then sold the solution, then punished for needing it. Sin, fear, forgiveness, vengeance, again and again and again. This gospel breaks the loop, where wholeness does not require permission, where existence is not defective by design, where life is lived now, not postponed. Freedom from identity nation. We proclaim freedom from identity control, from rebirth by erasure, from ancestral disconnection, from cultural replacement. Transformation that requires disappearance is domination. This gospel restores on dignity. When exposing religious lies, the gospel of recovery. Come with me, not back to where you were wounded, but forward to where your mind can heal without permission. You have already survived the exit. You already stepped out of fear. You already loosened the grip of doctrines that lived rent-free in your thoughts. This is not the moment of escape. This is the moment after escape. When the body exhales, when the mind realizes the noise has stopped, when silence no longer feels dangerous. This is recovery. We are not pulling you from hell, we are walking you out of damage. We are not saving your soul from fire. We are rehabilitating a mind that was trained to fear itself. This is the gospel they never preached, because healed people do not kneel easily. The condition you came from. You came from a system that fractured you on purpose. It taught you to distrust your own thoughts, to second guess your own questions, to feel guilty for noticing contradictions. It trained your nervous system to confuse fear with meaning, obedience with goodness, submission with peace. You were kept alert, not awake, obedient, not whole, dependent, not guided. You survived that. Now we begin recovery. What recovery actually means. Recovery is not belief replacement, it is deprogramming without erasure. It is not rebellion. It is restabilization. It is learning how to stand in your own mind without waiting for permission, without scanning for punishment, without bracing for judgment. Recovery is when your thoughts slow down, because nothing is chasing you anymore. Your body relaxes, because eternity is no longer threatening you. Your conscience starts working again, without being hijacked by fear's scripts. This is where I am taking you. Stage 1, nervous system recovery. The first thing religion damaged was not your morality, it was your nervous system. Constant talk of hell, demons, judgment, warfare kept you alert, tense, compliant. Recovery begins when your body learns nothing is hunting you. Nothing is watching your thoughts. Nothing is waiting to punish curiosity. You learn to sit in silence, without rehearsing prayers, without monitoring thoughts, without apologizing for existing. Calm returns, and with calm, clarity follows. Stage 2, identity recovery. You were taught to die before you lived, to erase yourself and call it rebirth, to abandon your instincts and call it faith. Recovery gives you continuity back. You remember who you were before you learned to be ashamed of being human. Your history reconnects. Your culture stops feeling sinful. Your personality stops needing justification. You are no longer a new creature, cut off from your past. You are a whole human, with memory intact. This is healing. Stage 3, moral recovery. Religion outsourced your ethics. Goodness was reduced to obedience. Evil was reduced to disobedience. Recovery returns morality to understanding. You no longer ask, what am I allowed to do? You ask, who does this affect? Does this cause harm? Does this increase dignity? You do good, not because you are threatened, but because you comprehend the consequences. This is adult morality.